No, you don't. Much less silly.
I'm typing my own introduction, and that's why it's getting really quiet here.
You
Okay,
guys can throw
well,
your pronouns in there too. That would help us.
so. Hi, everyone. This is Tigray. Jane and Kate, should I start now or wait?
Sure, because
Yeah.
we'll do introductions in a little bit, but
Okay.
if you already did it in the chat, you're just a little bit ahead.
Okay. All righty. All right. So greetings, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. If you're not about to speak, if you could please check your mute status and mute yourself. We are so glad you're here tonight to learn more about reparations with us. My name is Tigray. I'm off camera tonight. I'm here with my dear friends and colleagues, Kate and Jane, to facilitate the gathering. Tonight, we are some of the members of the Reparations Committee of Racial Justice Rising. And full disclosure, the three of us are all people of European descent who benefit from white privilege. You might wonder, why are white folks offering a teach-in about reparations? Well, that is a great question. Of course, it isn't appropriate for white folks to define how reparations should be carried out. The people who are harmed will define and direct reparations. We are passing on this information from reparations leaders in the movement. We're working closely with two different Black-led reparations groups, Grassroots Reparations Campaign and the New England chapter of NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. They have asked us to educate the public about this very topic. The Grassroots Reparations Campaign has invited people across the country to hold teach-ins in small groups. They offer trainings for those of you interested in doing this in your community. I learned that this practice of teach-ins was used in the first Truth and Reconciliation process in the US to create repair in the community of Greensboro, North Carolina, after the 1979 massacre of 5 labor organizers by the Ku Klux Klan. First of all, we are equals here. We are your peers. This is a learning process for us too. There may be more questions than we have answers for. I got awoken to the idea of reparations many years ago when I joined a peace walk with many others to retrace the transatlantic slave trade. In that year-long journey, I discovered, you know what, I'm just realizing I'm supposed to screen share something and I guess I'm nervous, huh?
Be great. It's fine. You're good.
So anyway, I'm going to be imperfect and just stop and just start my screen share because I am nervous.
Great modeling. That's awesome modeling of imperfection.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're really proud of you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I am nervous. Anyway, here we go. I'll welcome everyone again. So I'll just, where I left off, thank you for your encouragement, Jane, our support. Okay, I got awoken to the idea of reparations many years ago when I joined a peace walk with many others to retrace the transatlantic slave trade. In that year-long journey, I discovered a history that I wasn't taught. One, that slavery existed in the North too, and that indigenous people were enslaved before the African population. This teach-in will cover the United Nations definition of reparations. We will focus on reparations for African descended people in the US but are recognizing also the need for reparations for Indigenous people. At the end of this meeting, you will get a resource list with reparative action suggestions. On this list, Indigenous reparations will be included. For me, holding a teach-in like this is using my white privilege in a positive way. For those of us who are white, we are tasked to invite other whites into this movement for repair. Talking about reparations with my peers is one way to dismantle the system of white supremacy and to challenge the culture of colonization. For those of you new to this type of work, when I say white supremacy, I'm talking about white culture, which is embedded into the structure of all our systems of governance. It is the air we breathe. I'm not talking about the alt-right per se, but our systems of governance that are created to discriminate against people of color and to benefit white folks. White supremacy culture does not promote being accountable for harm done, but rather systematically perpetuates harm to certain groups as a way to keep power by creating division in our communities. For me, reparations is about being accountable. It's about caring about the suffering of others, understanding the source and cause of that suffering, and taking actions to stop it. So now I'm going to review our agenda. I will go over some guidelines for participation, invite you to do a centering activity. We'll do introductions. Then we will share 2 video clips on the United Nations definition of full reparations, followed by discussion in small groups. We will reconvene in the large group to discuss a little more, followed by sharing some suggestions of reparative actions that can be taken for the African American community. And then close with inviting you to make a commitment to a joyful action. So now the guidelines for participation. Realizing that this topic can be very challenging to feel into and discuss, we offer these guidelines as an attempt to create a safe and equitable space for all. We ask you to honor confidentiality around what is said by whom, but please share widely what you learn. Everyone will get a turn to speak, and you can pass if you're not ready to speak. If you tend to share a lot, please be mindful and share the airtime. Use I statements and speak from your own experience rather than generalizing and speaking on behalf of others. And I didn't notice if we have any people attending by phone, but if we do, you can press *9 to raise your hand to speak, or you can speak up when needed. And let us know if there are any accessibility needs. Are there any guidelines people feel, any other guidelines that people feel the need to add to this list? I'll just pause for a moment and you can unmute and speak up if so. Okay, I'm not hearing any, so we'll move on. Now we're going to do our centering activity. Please stay muted during this time. In a moment, we'll take a 30-second pause. During the pause, you can close your eyes if you want to. And I suggest noticing any thoughts that may be coming up. Notice how you're feeling emotionally. Am I eager, nervous, or something else? Notice how you're feeling, any sensations in your body. Maybe tightness, maybe relaxed, or something else. So now I will invite you to take a deep breath. And we'll start our 30-second pause. So I invite you for another deep breath. And I'll pass this on to Kate.
Thanks, Tigray, and thank you for 30 seconds. That doesn't seem like much, but sometimes it feels like we don't ever just take 30 seconds to just breathe and be quiet together. So it's nice to have you all here. I'm Kate Stevens. I'm part of this same, part of the Racial Justice Rising Reparations Committee. And some of you who were in pretty early may have already done this, but we're inviting people to introduce yourself on the chat. And we're asking you to say name, pronouns, the town you live in, if it's relevant to you, kind of what watershed you live in, and whose land are you inhabiting right now? And then just a short answer about why you are here tonight. So all this is just a couple lines. So let me see what's already there. Just want to say hi to people. John Lawrence, it's nice to have you here from Springfield. And Kate's here, Nipmuc Land in Northfield. Shannon, nice to have you here from Greenfield. Interested in learning more. Erica and Zoe live in Charlemont, Pecumtuck Land, and nice to have you both here. Let's see, John Lawrence put down Senegalese and First Nation roots, work for Western Mass nonprofit in the housing industry. Thanks, John, for being here. Karen's here from Northampton on the Nantucket land. Karen Schaefer, nice. Karen Schaefer, nice to have you here, Karen. Karen's from Shelburne Falls. Sharon Alpert. Shen from Shelburne Falls, and Shen has been part of Racial Justice Rising for years. And let's see, Ken Olchowski, I hope I said that right, Olchowski from Greenfield, Pecumtuck Land, nice to have you here. I'm also from Charlemont, and I'm part of the Deerfield River watershed, Deerfield River watershed on Nipmuc Land. Jane Stevenson is the other facilitator, and she lives on Pecumtuck Land and lives in Montague. And I hope you're looking at these because you can see why people are coming, just a line or two about, because most of my comfort and ease is due to generational wealth and white privilege. That's why she's here. Molly Chambers from Greenfield, nice to have you here, Molly. Carl McCargo from Springfield. He's here to learn more about what other reparationists are doing in their local communities. And it's nice to have you here, Carl. And Melanie Geyer. Nice to have you here, Melanie, from Montague on Pecumtuck. So this is at Nipmuc, Pecumtuck area, right around here. Laura's here from West Hampton. Nice to have you here, Laura. And so is there anyone else who hasn't introduced themselves who wants to do it? Just, you can raise your hand and introduce yourself if you haven't done it by. Michelle, if you unmute, you could just.
Hi, my name is Michelle. She, her. I live in Greenfield. I'm really interested in this reparation, the idea of reparations, and I'm here to learn more about it. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Michelle. A few other people have come on. Mishi is here. She's staying muted as she's getting her kids ready for bed, but she's glad to be here. It's nice to have you here, Mishi. And I see Sue Bowman.
Yes, I'm Sue Bowman. I live in Greenfield, and this is my friend Mary Ellen, who lives in Worcester, and she is joining us as well.
Nice to have you both with us. Yeah, thanks. So I think that's everybody. So we're going to begin, or once we sort of really get going, we're going to talk about, you know, reparations and give ourselves kind of a common framework about what reparations is. But before that, just without maybe knowing anything, I want people to respond to why we need reparations. And it could be one word. And you can do it, you can unmute and say it out loud, or you can write it in the chat. But just out of the top of your head, why would we need reparations? Why would we have a course on reparations? Why, I mean, why is there a need for reparations? Chat or say it right out loud.
Because people were so treated so poorly, we need to make up for that. It's terrible.
Thank you, Michelle.
Because it's
All right.
the right thing to do.
Thanks, Sue.
There's a debt that's owed. The wealth in this company came from enslavement. There's a debt that's due.
That's due. Thanks, Shen.
There are so many benefits that have been denied to Black people. The GI Bill, which allowed people like my father to go to college, to be able to get a house. There were a lot of blockades put up for Black people, redlining, so that
you.
they weren't able to get the full benefits. There's so much that has been denied that is owed.
Thank you, Karen. I'm seeing some here too. We're accountable for the harm done. John says atonement. Molly says for repair. Kenny saying making steps towards equity. Sharon saying healing of the nation. That's fantastic, and we just wanted to show you one. I don't know what you call it. It's almost like a cartoon, only it's not very funny, but it's an illustration of someone's response to why reparations. Jane is our tech person, so she will show you this illustration.
Did you not see it? Were you
No.
able to see it? No, it didn't come up. Oh gosh. You guys, I'm not a good tech person. How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if
Oops.
others can see it.
Can you see that, everybody? Great.
I can.
So-
Yeah.
Good. It's a little blurry, but it does talk about all these things here along this path that have gotten in the way of African Americans. And then it shows this little white dude down here that's like, hey, why are you so slow? What's going on?
So these are, to us, really specific reasons for reparations. It's part of what Karen was saying. It's like redlining, it's like mass incarceration, it's like Jim Crow, it's like all the things on that sort of cartoon. I don't know. Do you call that kind of thing a cartoon? I don't know. I thought cartoons are supposed to be funny. It's not very funny, but it's a, they call them illustration. Anyways.
Comic. I call it a comic.
You call it a comic. So what we want to do so that we all sort of find ourselves on the same page around what is reparations. We are going to start this teaching by establishing a common working understanding of reparations. In 2005, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution to define reparations. This resolution articulates the 5 basic principles of reparations. And these principles, it's not just the UN, but it has been really principles that have been widely embraced by victim advocacy groups across the globe. So a lot of our local reparations groups have also adopted these 5 principles. So we're going to introduce these 5 principles and then work to we'll actually see a chart of them also and get to see them. We'll both hear videos about them and we'll see them printed out so that depending on your learning method, you'll be able to either hear these or see them. So we're going to start with a 1.5 minute clip, which features reporter Laura Ling, who's describing reparations in general, and she specifically outlines the UN 5 principles.
Okay. Is that visible to everyone?
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
No,
Can't hear it?
no.
Drat.
Oh.
Guys, I practiced and practiced. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to stop the share for a second.
Can you maybe start over?
Yeah, I will start over when I figure it out. I feel like this maybe happened in our last reparations teach-in as well. Maybe the practicing is the bad thing. All right, trying again. Okay, I think we're going to be good now. Could you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
In May 2015, the Oxford Union renewed the debate on whether or not Britain owes India reparations. For nearly a century, the British Empire exploited Indian labor, natural resources, and military strength. Yet India has never been compensated for the significant loss of life, money, and culture, despite many calling for reparations. So what exactly are reparations? Well, reparations were originally intended to pay for injuries and damages sustained during a war paid by the losing side to the victor. However, in modern times, reparations are paid to victims of human rights violations, usually by offending countries. While the United Nations establishes the rights of reparation seekers, it is usually up to individuals to go through local or international courts to seek payment. Alternately, offending countries sometimes agree to reparations as a response to cultural and social demands. For instance, after World War II, West Germany agreed to pay more than 3 billion Deutschmarks to Israel in reparation for the Holocaust. This money was used to compensate survivors, recover property, and invest in Israel's economy. Reparations can take many forms. According to the UN, they fall into 5 categories: restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. Restitution seeks to restore property, employment, citizenship, or any specific loss by the victims. Compensation entails paying for financially accessible damages. Rehabilitation is assistance with any psychological, physical, or legal barriers. Satisfaction includes things like acknowledgments of atrocities or public apologies by the offending party. And guarantees of non-repetition are usually legal or cultural changes to the status quo to prevent the situation from reoccurring. So who receives reparations? Well, usually recipients are the original victims or their families. In the US, more than 100,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly interned during World War II. For the following 40 years, advocacy groups petitioned the government for reparations on their behalf. In 1988, the US finally issued an official apology to ex-internees and offered surviving victims $20,000 each. Although reparations are intended to provide some form of restoration to victims, actual reparations are exceptionally rare. Usually, so much time has passed that current governments refuse to take responsibility for historical atrocities. And even when reparations are given, they cannot simply repair the lasting effects of poverty, marginalization, exploitation, or abuse. In the 70 years since the end of British rule in India, much of the country has moved on. Yet the aftermath of colonial rule is still felt by many with no legal compensation.
So that was one clip, and we're going to show you another one so that you're getting a completely different view, but with using those same 5 principles. So this is a video clip. It's also about 3 minutes. It features Mabre Stali Butts, who is a member of the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table. And this was a presentation she did at the Movement for Black Lives Reparations teach-in.
All right, and you are going to be so sad, but you have to wait for 1 second because I got rid of everything when I got rid of that. Sorry. All right.
It gives us a moment to think about what we heard. And knowing that these 5 principles are used by a number of different groups, including Movement for Black Lives.
All right, I'm ready now. I'm sorry. Okay, here's Mabre Stali Butts. She talks really quickly, so just hang on to your hat. Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Systems as well. And so really,
can you hear it?
Yep.
Did you hear it for a second?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
specific repair for specific harm is key to our vision of reparations. I'm going to end really quickly with just defining reparations. There are kind of 5 key components. We borrow these definitions from the United Nations, where there is a long, robust history of reparations that have been paid to both nations and to different types of people. And so number 1 in the UN definition is reparations requires a cessation and a guarantee of non-repetition. And this is really important because that means that any reparations for any harms against Black people must include an end to that harm. So for instance, an end to the war on drugs harms would include the decriminalization of all drugs and the freeing of all people who are currently incarcerated for any drug offenses, right? And so there has to actually be an end of those harms. There must be a policy commitment to ending those harms. And for instance, for police brutality, that would require an end or guarantee of non-repetition of continued police violence, which would be the end of policing, right? And so this is really that reparations requires a policy change that is often fundamental and is often widespread. Secondly, reparations requires restitution and repatriation. That means that the state who's responsible for any wrongful injuring must reestablish the situation which existed before. This could be around citizenship, identity, cultural, livelihood, housing, legal standing, but again, you must be restituted for the harm that's been committed. Number 3, and this is, I think, what we are most familiar with, is reparations does include compensation, that anything that was not remedied by restitution must therefore be compensated. There must be financial compensation to the, quote, extent appropriate and proportional to the gravity of the violation. Number 4 is satisfaction. So under international law, it states that the party responsible for wrongfully injuring the people must provide satisfaction for the emotional suffering and harm and injury. This would include things like memorials, apologies, museums, statues. In Chicago, under the reparations statute there, they had a curriculum that attended to this. And so really satisfying all the harms that have been done via public and private memorialization and acknowledgement. And then lastly, it includes rehabilitation. And so this means that you must, whether it's in the form of legal, medical, psychological, or other care services, that we must actually rehabilitate those who have been harmed by the policy or the practice. And so I think the point of this is that reparations is a demand, but it's also a framework to understand how do we assess past harms and really address them in a meaningful way. So I'm going to stop there.
And so are we.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Jane. And so Jane was going to also share just a listing of those 5 things that we could look at, physically look at for a moment, and we'll actually read them.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put these up on the screen, and then I realize I won't be able to really see people's hands. Let's see if I can figure this out. I don't know if I'll be able to do this. I want to share the screen, put this on the screen, and then have people take turns reading it, but only if you want to read out loud. Some people like to, some people don't like to. So let's see if I can figure out how to show it. All right. Can you see that?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
And let's see. I think I can maybe see some hands. So if you'd like to, if you're willing to read, why don't you put up your little hand from the reactions thing, and then I will know that, okay, Zoe or Erica would like to read. So you can go ahead. I can make it bigger.
Can you thank you.
Is that bigger for you? Or is it bigger for me?
That's bigger. That's bigger.
Okay, great. So let's start with Zoe and company, and you could read the title and the first chunk.
5 Principles of Reparations as defined by the United Nations. Cessation and guarantee of non-repetition. Under international law, a state responsible for wrongfully injuring a people is under an obligation to, quote, A, cease the act if it is continuing, and B, offer appropriate assurances and guarantees of non-repetition, end quote. This requires fundamental policy changes like restructuring legal, educational, and carceral systems.
Thank you. Now we have Karen Brown Courage.
Restitution and repatriation, measures which serve to, quote, restore the victim to the original situation before the gross violations occurred, end quote. Changes traced to the wrongful act are reversed through restoration of freedom and community, recognition of humanity, identity, culture, repatriation, livelihood, citizenship, legal standing, and wealth to the extent they can be. And if they cannot, restitution is completed by compensation.
Thanks, Karen. Now we'll have Karen Schaefer.
Okay. Compensation. The injuring state, institution, or individual is obligated to compensation for the damage. If damage is not made good by restitution, compensation is required for any financially accessible damage suffered to the extent appropriate and proportionally to the gravity of the violation and circumstances. Such damage includes physical or mental harm, lost opportunities, material damages, and loss of earnings, moral damage, cost of legal, medical, psychological, and social services.
Wow, awesome. And then I see Lara has her hand raised.
Rehabilitation. Rehabilitation shall be provided to include legal, medical, psychological, and other care and services, healing of generational trauma.
Thanks, Lara. Do you want to just kind of go ahead and keep sailing through since no one else has
Sure.
their hand up? Thanks.
Satisfaction. Various measures which include the cessation of human rights violations and abuses, truth-seeking, searches for the disappeared, recovery and reburial of remains, public apologies, commemoration, and memorialization.
Thanks. All right. Pretty overwhelming, right? Like, let's just do that quick. That's a lot. So we've heard from you know, the movement for Black lives. We heard about the UN and reparations efforts across the world. We've seen these 5 principles of reparations. We looked at a comic. And now what we'd like to do is get you into some small groups to talk a little bit about what you've just been exposed to. And for some of you, it might be brand new. And for others, it might be, you know, like this is your job and you think about it all the time. So just recognize that there are various levels of understanding here. And the only way to get through is to get messy and muddy and try it out. So don't be worried about saying like the perfect thing. And please, you know, enter bravely into the time of talk. We had a couple of discussion questions we want to throw out there, but you can riff on whatever you want. One question was, what was your experience like watching these videos and hearing these words? Did you learn anything new? Did you notice any emotions emerge? And those could be, you know, any variety of emotion. There's no good or bad emotion. Did something in particular spark your interest or make you curious or make you mad or sad? And then what aspects of the UN's 5 principles of reparations do you think are least understood? I'll throw these questions in the chat, and we're going to have about 15 minutes or so in these small groups to discuss, and you'll get a warning when it's time to come back. Any questions before we head off into small groups? Just make sure my chat rooms are good. Okay, goodbye. Oh, Laura, did you have your hand up for a question? Oh, okay. Hey, John, welcome back.
Hello.
Welcome back, Kenny. Welcome back, Karen, Michelle.
Hi.
Were you all in a group together?
Yes.
Yes, I'm very, very, deductive in my reasoning, huh?
Well, you do a good job.
Not that it was obvious.
I know, right? Look at these fools. They're all back at the same moment.
Kenny's not in our picture.
We're all right. Looks like we're all coming back. I think we're all back. Awesome. You guys, you know what happens? I don't know if you've ever hosted a Zoom where you have to put people in breakout rooms, but you just sit there by yourself. Like, I just sat there and I checked Facebook and I was like, what are they talking about? I'm dying to know. So now I want to know what everyone was talking about. And I'm sure everyone wants to know what everyone else was talking about. So I'd like to take some time right now just to have people share any big or small questions that emerged from your breakout discussions that you'd like to bring to the bigger group, like a quandary or a curiosity. Let's hear from what different groups, like what you came up with or questions you had. And you can just unmute yourself and talk at will.
You won't sleep tonight.
Well, I think Michelle raised a really good question in our group of what level do reparations need to occur on, personal level or federal government or anything in between. And we were talking about that, and Carl was sharing some of his experiences with other reparations, thinking in groups. But I think that's a big question.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I think the idea of compensation and how it's to be distributed seems to be one of the biggest issues and one of the highest stumbling blocks that people use as an excuse not to move forward with any type of progress towards reparations.
Yeah, I think of it as just being a very long process, and it will take years, and we need to work at all those different levels because it's 400 years. So you can't just, it's like, what was it, the number of years that the Japanese were in internment camps? And of course, the Holocaust was horrible, but it was also a very sort of specific period of time. And so to think about how you can figure out how reparations for 400 years of slavery on so many different levels.
Good points there, yeah. Any other questions that people came up with or wonderings or aha moments?
Our group was in the beginning kind of struggling about, thinking about like how some of this could happen. And we were talking about the first bullet point, or I forget which bullet point it is, where it's, bringing the harmed group back to their original status. And we were like, how could you do, it's like, how would we do that? Blah, 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 blah. And then somebody said, like, you know what, we're like, that's not really up to us to decide as white people. So that kind of was like, oh yeah, that was important.
Cool. Good point.
We had a couple of specific examples that we were talking about. One was, I was wondering why in such a relatively short time, reparations, financial reparations for Japanese Americans was able to be achieved and happened. And we know that it hasn't. All the rest of it, the attitudes and all the accompanying factors. This was money. So what's the difference, or what made that part of it successful, and then we hit a brick wall when other monetary issues are discussed about reparations? And then we also talked about the money from the COVID relief money that was supposed to go to Black farmers. And I read a headline today that said they're not getting it. It hasn't happened. So that's a specific thing. Where's that money? Why is it being held up? It's one thing to say this is going to happen, and it's another thing to actually have it happen. So it's very complex.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That it is.
You know, something kind of interesting is that Racial Justice Rising Reparations Committee has, we have a couple of accountability partners, because as white people kind of like in the muck and the mud, we feel like we need to kind of do a sound check sometimes with African Americans and in our community if we're going to be working on Black reparations. And one of our accountability, both of our accountability partners, one works with a New England in COBRA, which is the North America, oh my gosh, Cater Tigre. It's a
The National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America.
Okay, thank you. And then our other accountability partner is, among other things, works with the Grassroots Reparations Campaign. So they're both pretty much, you know, like full-time reparationists. And one of them really believes in this question. I forgot who raised it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe John, about like, are reparations an individual thing or are they a federal thing? And was that you, John, that said that?
No, but I was talking about the compensation.
Okay. Oh, right. That's right.
Somebody else mentioned federal
Yeah.
and how it would be done.
Yeah. So one of our reparations accountability partners really believes that we can make personal reparations. People can transfer, you know, generational wealth, and that can be reparations. And another one of our accountability partners thinks that it really has to be focused on a federal level. So that is just to say there's not like an answer. There's just a whole puddle of questions and answers. And that was actually kind of a relief to hear, because I don't know, you know, like no one person can speak for their entire, you know, group of people. So, but we do have some ideas coming at you at the end of the program about how you can make a personal difference, like an individual difference with in terms of reparations. Other thoughts and ideas that came up or questions? I'm wondering if anyone had I know when I first heard the Movement for Black Lives speaker, Maubrey Stolly Butts, talking about reparations, when she said that cessation would include total abolition of policing, just getting rid of policing entirely, and releasing any people who were being incarcerated under any drug charges, and ending the colonization. I think she called it like, I forget what she said, but just basically ending the attack on drugs and freeing anyone who had been incarcerated under drug charges. That those two things were really, that was very new to me. That would it be part of the cessation. And I'm wondering if anyone had any reactions to those ideas.
I had a reaction, which was that I felt humble because I really don't even know. I can't even imagine the scope of the societal change that would be. I don't know how many people would be not incarcerated anymore. I don't know. Like, I mean, I might know a number, but I can't really picture it. I can't really. I was excited by it, I guess, is part of what happened. Is I felt kind of excited, but also very uninformed at the same time.
Well, a very easy place for them to start would be to release all of those predominantly young men, African-American men who went to jail by the use of draconian sentencing just for selling marijuana back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then now all across the country, marijuana is legalized, and these young men who are probably now middle-aged men are still locked up in prison. It makes no sense.
Well, according to federal law, it's still a not a approved thing, and
It's a
that's
state by state thing.
That's right. It's a state by state thing, but they still can't. You still can't have a bank account and pay for it through a bank account. You have to pay cash or whatever. And the banks can't handle the money, and I mean, it needs to be decriminalized. And you also need to release all those people who were locked up. I mean, we lock up way too many people in the United States. And if anything, if anyone has problems with drugs, they need treatment, not jail. So
if there's a documentary on Netflix called 13th.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it goes with the book, the new Jim Crow, I think. And it's like, it is, it just lays it all out, how like mass incarceration, it's a business, people benefit it. It is like the modern day slavery, like it's crazy.
That's right.
Oh, that, yeah.
Slave labor.
Yeah, and I didn't think about, I've never thought about that in connection with reparations, but it's actually really, really important.
Yeah.
And,
You can invest.
It's very interesting because in the 13th Amendment, they say that you can't lock people up unless they have committed a crime. And then they went about writing all these laws that would just affect Blacks to get locked up.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's legislation pending, and I'm not sure if it's in Massachusetts or I ran across it where they were planning to basically expunge the records of all the marijuana cases.
Yeah.
I thought it was a Massachusetts issue that was happening, but someone might want to check into that.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure. Any other juicy things that came to mind when we learned about the 5 components of reparations?
I just wanted to just share one reaction I had to that video and the end of policing kind of framed as part of reparations. And I guess my reaction to it, I wasn't at all surprised to hear her say that. I mean, the platform, the policy platform, and the policy demands have been, I think, really clear from Movement for Black Lives and different Black Lives Matter kind of adjacent organizations. But what struck me about it was that there is like a big question in my mind about like who represents the harmed community, and like which types of issues are represented as like uniform demands or goals. Because, you know, that the perspective she shared is, you know, associated with their movement, but not all descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States have that same view about policing. In fact, the majority don't. And so to me, there, you know, it just brought in my mind in this conversation the question about, you know, how complicated it is to authorize certain groups and communities to make the demands on behalf of everyone, when these demands themselves are extremely contested within those communities, and like there isn't agreement at all that that's, you know, what is universally wanted. And so, you know, I can imagine people who are on board with reparations being absolutely infuriated if, you know, that to hear that that was like part of what was being sold as reparations, as opposed to like, you know, getting land, money, compensation for me and my, you know, whatever, as opposed to policy demands that are very contested. So I just, you know, this is not, I'm not representing one view or the other, but just the really complicated picture of like, you know, who gets to make the demand? What are they? How do they know that it's widely shared, universally shared among the communities that deserve reparations? I'm just genuinely worried about that.
Good point.
Thanks, Erica.
We're going to move on in a few minutes, so we do have a couple more minutes. Did someone pose a question that they wish we would have addressed more? Let's see, T-Gray took some notes in the chat, which was so smart.
I noticed that when John said the thing about the compensation can be a stumbling block, it's like, I think for most people, one of the people in our group said, when he hears these, it helps him feel the fullness of what reparations means, because his thinking is it's about money. This is about money. And I think it is about money, but it's a lot more than money. That the money alone wouldn't do it. But I think it's a stumbling block, and because I think that's what people think it is, period. You know, and I think all the thing about memorials and apologies and all that stuff is so important too. And it's it has to people's hearts have to change, and sometimes it's that more community stuff that does the heart changing work.
Andy?
Right.
And sometimes I think it's things changing on a legal level. You know, a lot of the civil rights legislation that was passed in the 60s then laid the groundwork for things to start shifting, at least in some ways, so that some people who would have not supported more equal rights for Black folks sort of started realizing they had to look at that and act differently.
Yeah, the problem historically has been, even though legislation has been put on the books, it hasn't been enacted upon. And then in many cases, it's been revoked. And the rights that were supposed to be afforded African-American people were actually taken away, even though there's legislation on the books that say they have certain rights. And that's what's been the problem historically. It's really, as you were saying, Kate, it's about attitudes and beliefs. And that really, you know, what happens is those attitudes and beliefs translate into certain aspects of government where Black people or African-American people are marginalized legally as well as societally. So, you know, it's a difficult fight. It's been going on for many, many years. And like you said, to your point, it's about changing hearts and changing the way people think.
I think that it's really important, the whole fight that I think our group was talking about, not to have these things occur again. I mean, now we're going through a period where things are going backwards in terms of voting rights. Voting rights that we thought came in with the 60s, and those were going to be with us forever. Well, that we're gradually losing it all over the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a fight which is ongoing today in the near future, and who knows, when if my grandchildren will even, experience, having those rights fully available as they should be.
That's so true, Molly. Thank you. Yeah, so you guys, this is a good transition because now we're all just like, I'm all sad and everything, but we're about to hit you with some real things you can do to change the future. So we're going to turn this frowns upside down. Tigre's going to take it away.
I just wanted to say one thing, and I'm speaking for Mishi, who had to, her child was calling for her, but she asked a question: is this a movement? I think it's a great question, because a number of us here are taking a course on Sunday nights, and there's another set through Coming to the Table that's a Wednesday night classes all year round, and there's, there is a bit of a movement. So I just say that as we get into what are some of the resources and what are some of the things we can do, is we could be part of a movement that counters all this other crap.
Yeah, Kate. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Tigre, take it away.
Okay, I was muted. What a great discussion, a lot of food for thought, and just want to ask if you don't need to speak up right now, if you could check your mute status. So here are some reparative actions we can take for supporting reparations for the African American community, and we will send you this list after this program in an email, so you don't need to take notes. You can just relax and listen. We're going to cover outer repair and then inner repair. Let's see. One goal is to build, so one way to do reparations for the African American community is to build public support for it. And one way to do this is to support HR 40. For those of you not familiar with HR 40, it's a bill that would establish a commission to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. This is an example of satisfaction and moving towards guarantee of non-repeat of harm. As of November, we have 208 co-sponsors, and this is really exciting because when I started following HR 40 about 4 years ago, there were about 32 co-sponsors. And so it's just a few votes away from successfully passing it in the House. So these are some things that we can do to address. Let me see if this is in the way. I don't know if this, I'm going to just move my, I don't know.
It all looks good, Tigre.
Is it, you can see it okay?
For sure.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if that, whatever was in the way. Okay, all right. So what we can do is we can send an email directly to the House leadership, like Nancy Pelosi, and demand to bring the HR 40 to the floor for a vote. We can post on social media with the hashtag HR 40 to the floor. We can do that, use our social media. We can also call the 16 remaining Democrats that have not signed on to HR 40, and this is as of November. And the list will provide you later, as I said. Another way to build public support for reparations is you could consider signing Racial Justice Rising's apology and reparations commitment. This is an example of satisfaction. There's also, we also invite you to write an essay or submit artwork explaining why you support reparations. Also an example of satisfaction. We can also, for those of us that are able, we can financially support Black-led reparations organizations. And we list here 4 examples. In COBRA, the Grassroots Reparations Campaign, the Movement for Black Lives, and the National African American Reparations Commission. So moving on to Inner Repair, both organizations we work closely with, as we mentioned, the Grassroots Reparations Campaign and the New England and COBRA chapter, have made it clear that repair needs to happen within as well, as all of us have been harmed by racism. So one suggestion for inner repair is to participate in ancestral recovery work. This is an example of rehabilitation. One way to do this is consider taking this online program called Before We Were White, Ancestral Recovery for Collective Liberation. This is especially for whites and biracial people. Another way that we can, suggestion for inner repair is to decolonize our minds with others. This is also an example of rehabilitation. And we offer 4 examples of ways we can do this by learning through these different books, ideally with others, and not to do it alone, but with others. My Grandmother's Hands is specifically geared toward whites, blacks, and the police. Sacred Instructions is really a message for all. And then also another suggestion is Me and White Supremacy book. So again, we will send you this list of resources, and of course there's many ways to do reparations. These are some suggestions, and I'll pass it on to Kate.
Thanks,
I'm just going
Tigray.
to pop in really quick first and say, in the resource list we're going to send you will also be, I don't think you said this, Tigray, suggestions of ways you could make reparations towards the indigenous communities. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that's true.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Thank you.
So thanks. That is just a snippet of what we can do. And I think if we had another 15 minutes even right now, I'd love to hear about other people's ideas about what we can do individually and collectively. And maybe one way to do it is the way we were going to end, which is our reparations committee meets twice a month. And at the end of every meeting, we have what we call joyful actions. And that is we each take a moment to say something we're going to do in the next couple weeks towards reparations, whatever that might look like. I mean, early along for me, that meant calling my family together and having a family conversation. That was one of the hardest things I ever did around reparations. Other things might be reading a particular book or taking a particular class or deciding you're going to give a certain percentage of your income somewhere. So it's whatever is going on in our lives. And because we meet every 2 weeks, we're just saying, like, I'm going to read the next 2 chapters of the book on reparations that I'm reading. But whatever it is, whatever has come to your mind this time, we would love to hear from everybody. If you can say it personally, that's great. If you're uncomfortable with that, you can write it in the chat. But what's something you're going to do in the next few weeks that in your mind has something to do with reparations? The floor is open. Go ahead, Michelle.
I like the idea, so I'm going to call Nancy Pelosi and ask her to bring HR 40 to the floor for a vote, and then I support it. Okay, I think it's an important one.
Unbelievably, Nancy Pelosi is one of the 10 Democrats who has not signed on to it yet.
My God, that's terrible. She's the leader of the House.
I know, it's crazy.
I know. Well, her name sounds Italian and so does mine. So maybe that'll help.
Great.
I also want to do that. And I also want to check with your reparations committee to see if you have room for any new members.
Yeah, I'm interested in the meetings that Kate was talking about and what all that entails, and also definitely going to look at the resources that were given through this teach-in, and want to use social media. Yeah, and the HR 40, definitely want to follow that.
Definitely going to take some of the suggestions that you're offering and follow up on them.
I'll call Nancy Pelosi too, but I'm especially motivated to figure out how to get people who are incarcerated because of marijuana in the 70s out. Really want to work on that.
Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I think I'm going to practice losing my fear of confronting my elected officials and try to somehow engage them more frequently and more readily. But I think right now I'm kind of intimidated by the titles and by their office, and not looking at them as regular people like me. But I think I need to kind of put myself on a equal basis, that my ideas are just as good as theirs, and go from there.
I think I want to, do some of the things that were listed, but I also have been thinking about those family discussions too, that are really hard, especially my family. I don't know about people that are hard to have discussions with without, who like to argue a lot. But yeah, I think it's, this gives me more ammunition or, more information to be able to have a more, knowledgeable conversation about it in a way that I feel like is helpful. Gives me, I have more to work with now.
Melanie, if you want to talk, if you want to talk to someone about doing it, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. It was a process.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting process.
For sure. Thank you.
Karen.
I would like to suggest another book, which I found really helpful, and it's called Mindful of Race by Ruth King, who is African American. She teaches meditation, and she's also a lesbian. And she says that racism is a heart disease and there's a cure for it. And it's thinking about what, I can't explain it, but I found it really helpful, and thinking about how you just becoming much more aware of your white privilege. I mean, I don't think that I mean, just inadvertent things that I would say and do. And then I would realize, like, well, I was just, using my white privilege in that situation. There used to be a wonderful sign outside of the Just Roots farm that said, what are you going to do with your white privilege? How are you going to use it for good?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Anyone else?
Yes, I'm a Unitarian, and for several years, an investigation was done of our entire denomination and racism within the denomination. And there's a book, which is a study about all the racism that was found within the denomination and recommendations for addressing that. And I just learned more about that today, talking to some people from the Unitarian Church in Northampton. And I'm going to be trying to arrange to have some of them get together with the people in our church to start talking about this, to look further at our denomination and changes that need to happen within the Unitarian Church, individually and systemically.
Nice. All right. I know it's 8:32, so we're officially 2 minutes past time, which I know makes people nervous. I see a lot of twitching happening.
If you just check chat, I wrote some of those down. I see Michelle's hand, and if anyone else, just take 1 more second, so we'll get you off on time. Almost.
So my question is, are you all going to do this again? Because this was helpful.
Well,
was this a one-time thing?
What a great question that would lead directly to the last thing we wanted to say before we hung up. So I don't know, maybe Sue, did you want to say something before I saw you had your hand up? Sue Bowman?
Oh, I wanted to say that I'm interested in finding out what has been done at the community level with reparations. I know a while back, Asheville, North Carolina had a proposal for community reparations, and I don't know what happened with that. Also, my alma mater, Miami University, which is located in Ohio, has a relationship going with the Miami people who are now, of course, living in Oklahoma from the Miami tribe. And I want to look at that a little more closely and see if what they're doing really fits the definition of reparations as identified by the United Nations.
Nice, very powerful. That's cool. Well,
Mishi, I spoke for you. Oh. At one point when you were with your child and just said the thing about, is this a movement? I love that question. Is this a movement? This whole reparations thing. And I'm going to think about that. And if there was anything else you wanted to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that there's actions as individuals feels very feasible. And I think that actions as a group and collective actions, if we acknowledge that this is all systemic, that feels more challenging. So I agree, like conversations like this and having opportunities to come together wherever we're at individually is really, really invaluable. So yeah, I look forward to attending for the first time the next reparations committee meeting. And also I've been in conversation over the past year or two with some friends and fellow artists. I'm a musician myself, and we live on a former dairy farm in Gill, Massachusetts, and we're very interested in forming a community of people who want to engage in land reparation. So I'm learning a lot about that, about Soul Fire Farm, about the Black and Indigenous reparations, like the farm map and this kind of thing. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can.
Thank you. Thanks. And some people have been writing a chat. So if you can peek at the chat and you'll see some things. Kenny, thank you for putting something in, and Shen and John. Okay, take us away, Jane.
We're gonna send you the resource list, and we're also gonna send you a request to do a quick feedback form about this event. And it really won't take you long, promise, because I hate it when they're like, this will only take 3 minutes, and it takes 20 minutes. So this one's really actually very short. And on it, there is, like, to answer Michelle's question, there's like a chance to say if you would like more of programming like this, and specifically what. So I heard some questions about, like, let's hear about some local reparation efforts. So that would be like a kind of a cool program to have. So please fill out that form, get the resource list, and then you'll have my email, because I've been emailing everyone individually. So if you have any follow-up questions, or you want to get involved in a different way, I can like help scoot you to the right people for that. And I'm really stoked about all these like joyful actions we're going to take. I feel like pretty much we're going to solve all of this in the next 3 weeks. Just this little group, right? I really believe in it. So thank you.
Thank you all. Nice
Bye.
to have you
Thanks
here.
for joining us.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye, Laura. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank
you very,
an
very
Emily
much.
Rosenfeld necklace, right? Is that Emily Rosenfeld?
I don't think it is actually.
No. Okay.
But
Kind of looks like
I do
it.
like her stuff a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. Good to see you.
Good
Happy
to see you.
vacation.
Thank you, you too.
So-
good timing.
Jane?
Yeah.
Could I ask you, if you do this again, can we be in the same groups? Because I feel like we sort of started connecting and then we were done.
Wow, that's a bummer. Yeah.
But that would be nice. If the same people were there, if you all do this again, same people were there, it'd be nice to be in the same group. We had a lovely group.
Good.
That's a super good idea.
So good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
Cool.
for everything you all did.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jane, did you know Melanie? You said hi to her right away. I thought maybe you did.
I know her.
If she wants, I'm serious about if she wants to think about a family discussion.
Can you stop the recording?
Oh, good point.